So yeah, so I can show you right here. We have, I made two. The instant is like the line of sight one, where basically checks, just draws a line, and if it hits something, and if it's player, then it does damage. And then when I showed that to like my brother, he was like, oh, that's not as cool. And he said I should do the projectile one.
Gotcha.
And so it both it works fine, because you would have to use projectile for something like a rocket launcher.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what most games do. Like, if you can see the bullet
Yeah.
in a game, then they do the projectile one.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like the sniper rifle where you just instantly see this vapor trail,
Yeah.
that's a line that
Yeah.
they're doing.
And the effect is just literally an effect drawn across a line. It's not actually shooting anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now we're just using projectile. I think it's probably a little more computationally intensive to shoot them, but like there's no mesh attached to the bullet or anything. It's just shoot an invisible little ball.
And computers nowadays can handle projectiles for snipers and stuff.
Yeah. So, and our maps are like a little bit smaller, so you probably wouldn't notice them because there is like fall off on the bullets, like the drop after you go after a long time. They're affected by gravity and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think the arena is like 300 meters in like diameter. It's like pretty small. It's basically instant.
So with the sniper, can you shoot through two people?
Right now, no, but you can do that. Yeah. You would just change the collision, because right now it's on like the collision of the bullet is set to like block. So when it hits the first thing, it has like a struck, like a hit result. Yeah. But you could change the collision to like overlap, so it would like go through things, and you can put like a counter on it, so like it can only go through like 3 people, and then it'll just like get destroyed. And
Gotcha.
erased. So yeah, we can do stuff like that, and so yeah, like we've been saying. Then the projectile, the gun shoots spawns the projectile. But the projectile also has a reference back to the character. That's for things like, if you want to do things like who killed this person, you'll have to know who shot the bullet. And if you also want to like keep track of like who dealt how much damage. So
That should be dashed line.
this should be dashed.
If it spawns it but doesn't really have it.
Good point. This one has 0 to mini. This one only have. Wait, no. I did that first. So yeah. And then every projectile has an impact effect class on it, which is basically the particle effect or whatever.
Gotcha.
I initially made 2, impact effect and explosion effect, and again I kind of felt these are basically the same thing, they're just playing animation.
Yeah.
So that's why this one's yellow pretty much. It is not useful anymore. So I guess every impact effect has one projectile. So this is like a 1-to-1. And this means like a multiplicity too. And so the character, this is complicated. I guess it would actually only be 1-to-1, right?
So the person shooting has the projectile?
So I can walk you through it real quick. Process of shooting a bullet is quite long, but I can kind of show you guys. It goes through like a lot of stuff. So let's close all this stuff and find our character. So I just apparently just went hard and paint with these classes. So this thing has a start fire. So basically, he calls this and takes like the controller. And so, if you guys don't, just to explain the controller real quick, like you can think of the controller as like the player, and then you have your character. And so you can actually take your controller and like switch it and plug it into different things.
So like if you get in the car, the controller will switch
Yeah.
to the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then if you're like open your menu, your controller actually will then plug into the menu so you can interface with that stuff. So you just make sure that the controller, well, you have the controller, and that it is allowing game input, and it's not running. This is actually kind of a weird check, because it says here, if you're running and you start to fire, and by running it means like sprinting, it'll actually stop you from running, and then you'll start to shoot the weapon.
Oh, okay.
And then this will just check if he does not want to fire, he's not in combat. Basically, if he's trying to shoot, then we set it to true, and then it calls start fire on the weapon, his current weapon. And so then that would come into ranged weapons. There's a function called start fire. Summary files. Okay, so this basically is like server business right here. So this is saying if the player that shot is not the server, we're actually going to tell the server to call this function. And if you want to see kind of how this works, it just goes server start fire and does like some validation. So you can put like other checks in here, like is logged in, all these different kind of like can do functions. But right now it just pretty much always return true. And then it'll call both of these functions, like Unreal Engine like does that, handles that. And then it'll just basically call back that function we were just in on the server. So now the server is going to call this function. And it's going to set the fire into true, and it's going to determine the weapon state. See, there's tons of freaking steps to this thing. Determine weapon state. Yeah, so this just does a lot of things like, is it equipped? Is he reloading? If he is reloading and wants to fire. So it's going to check like all these different things. And if it's like valid, we're going to set the weapon state to like firing. And then it does checks if he's doing a melee attack and he can't fire. And yeah. And then sets the weapon state to firing. And then where does it go from here? It's been a long time since I've covered this. Okay, so yeah, then it comes here, and then it calls like on the burst. Same stuff. And basically from here, it does handle fire. You have to give me the gist of it. Sorry.
Balance points.
It's good. It's handled a lot of things. And this is pretty much where it like shoots. Kind of. It'll simulate fire on the client, which will just play like the shooting effect.
Mm-hmm.
But on the server is the one that'll actually like shoot the bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And where does it go from here? Yeah, so here's a server's implementation of shooting. And the fire thing. So yeah, this is the simulating weapon fire. It's just playing the muzzle effect to make it look like it's shooting. Spawn the actual bullet. Oh, yeah, it doesn't actually happen until I'm here. So that's what this thing actually will call fire weapon. Where is this happening? Oh, so it does happen in the handle fire. So yeah, then all this was done like in the super class, but then the actual shooting will happen down in the child. And then also it does things like consumes ammo, so your ammo count goes down. And then this does a bunch of crazy math to basically make sure it shoots the right direction and like create some spread. And then finally, yeah, then it just like fires it off into the world. And like the hit info is actually in the projectile. It says all these freaking like things to do the collision. But this will basically, when it hits something, it'll call explode. And then that's where it'll look at the impact effect class, and it'll play the right thing. So basically, the particle, the projectile has like a boolean. So if it's an explosive, so if it's true, that means like something like a rocket launcher. It'll come down here and it'll apply like radial damage, so like damaging an area. If not, it's going to apply point damage. And this is where I check to see if it was a headshot. If it was a headshot, it does critical damage. Yeah, just times 2 damage. If not, it just does base damage. So we can add like more things in here, like shooting the arms and legs does less damage. Shooting the chest is like normal. I know like Far Cry 4 and 3, if you shoot them in the heart, it's like an instant kill. It's like kind of super hard to do. So you can do like, you can add like a bunch of like cool hit points on, and it's like super easy to do. You just, this impact, the projectile knows what it hit, it knows what bone it hit, so then you just check, so like impact, bone name, 2-string. You can see what it hit.
Gotcha.
And then deals damage, and then the character in here, he has a take damage function or something. Which then comes down here, sees what the actual damage, if he died, all that. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing.
So it's definitely an event-driven server.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, things just queue up. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm getting it.
This is like the first time I've really like gone through and tried to like
Explain it.
yeah, and also like kind of like categorize it. And this is actually it was a good review for me to do.
Yeah.
This line doesn't need to be there. Okay, so that was that whole thing. That's like shooting. Anything that is dealt with like you do with a weapon, so like melee attacks, reloading, shooting, running out of ammo. That all follows pretty much the same kind of workflow that shooting did. The character calls it, and it goes to here, checks some states, does it, and then it's like actually performed. And then, yeah, then shooting actually will go one step out further with the projectile. That's that. I kind of want to like just cover more of like the basic mechanics of the game, so you can kind of understand like how moving's done and all that other stuff. I haven't even really started to like work out the UML for like the online play. And I don't think it's like super important right now because this is basically the meat and bones of it all. So a lot of these like actually don't do much. Oh, I forgot about this. There's a damage type.
Isn't it the radial versus?
Yes and no. So I actually don't know if I do my damage type right. Let me look at it real quick. Yeah, it actually doesn't do anything. So yeah.
Okay.
You're exactly right. You can use Unreal has like base ones like radial damage, point damage. You can make your own if you want to do like more crazy stuff. So apparently at one point I probably made this and realized I had what I needed already built in. So this should actually be marked yellow and it'll probably go away.
Unless we want to do like shoot them and then at 90 degrees bullets shoot off.
Yeah, because then
Anyway.
you can even do things where it's like you shoot them and then like kind of like in League of Legends where like that one person shoots something and it like shoots off, does damage like along the axes. Do like interesting stuff. So yeah, you can definitely do cool stuff with that. We have like grenades already built in. This is kind of like a hack job. I was just testing to see how to do it. But basically, the character says like on start, throw a grenade, and then he basically plays the animation where he throws it, and then there's a little like they call it like a socket in Unreal, like on the player's hand, and then I spawn the grenade in the player's hand, but I spawn it like at like this point in the animation, so I'd go like half a second into the animation and then spawn it. So he'll go like this, and then right when he gets here, it spawns and then like flies out, so it looks like he threw it.
Gotcha.
And then this thing is the same. It's actually, I did write my own class for it, but I didn't need to, and I am actually going to go back and change that. This is basically copied and paste the projectile.
Yeah.
And it just goes out there. The grenade is actually a little bit broken in the fact that it explodes once its velocity gets below like 1 or something like that. So pretty much like when it comes to a stop, it explodes. But I basically just have to put a timer in there that says like after 4 seconds, explode.
Yeah.
So just yeah, but it's an easy fix. But yeah, it's a little bit broken right now. If you throw like syrup in the air, it'll probably despawn before it explodes. Because I said, I'll kind of show you how you do it. Lifespan. Oh yeah. So yeah, you can just there's like this function set lifespan, and I have it set to the projectile lifespan plus 2. I guess it's like 4 seconds. And then once the lifespan's over, things just like disappear in the game. So that's how you can do kind of like the cleanup. You don't want like a bunch of particles sitting around in memory, not doing anything.
Yeah.
So always set the lifespan of things that are gonna like be only in there for a second. Cover's like a weird one. I actually don't know how to put it in the UML. Maybe I can kind of show you. I basically did the way we talked about Corey way back in the day.
Yeah.
Where I just kind of created these like volume cubes, and then like when you go into them, then you like know that it's like a potential cover. And these are mostly I use like the blueprints scripting to do it.
Yeah. So that would make it hard to do that.
Yeah. Because it's technically like scripted in there. I could totally like move it into here now because when I first started doing it, I was like really confused and it wasn't working. So I was just doing it really fast. I did the blueprints and it got to work, and I might be able, I could probably bust into code. Let's let that load. These don't really do much, but I'll show you anyways. So let's start with the controller. So this has a lot of stuff. These are like achievements that you've defined. And so when you think of like the controller, like I just talked about it, that the controller like is the player, and no matter what he's doing, like these are the things that the player will always be able to do regardless of if he's playing like his humanoid guy, or if he's in a vehicle, or if he's whatever. So that's why the achievements are in here, and there's like some other stuff up there. But basically, it doesn't do much other than like it can open the menu, and then I was trying to get voice chat to work, but it's unsuccessful so far. So yeah, the controller doesn't actually like have things to like move the character forward. That right now is actually inside the character.
Yeah.
This just does things like, regardless of what you're playing, these are the actions you'll want to be able to perform, which is basically open the menu, and then it also does a lot of like achievement tracking, progression tracking, because again, your controller is persistent no matter what you're doing.
So when I like press a button, does it always go through the controller to whatever?
No, actually, because like you can basically set these things, set input component or whatever, and this is where you're like binding certain events to a key.
Okay.
So in this one, it's basically saying like if it's pressed, and the actual key is assigned in the editor to make it more versatile. But then if we look at over at the character, where did you go?
What are you looking for?
Just trying to show how like actions are performed.
What are you trying to spell?
I thought the function was called set input,
Oh.
but not actually. It should be somewhere at the top though.
So basically
Here we go.
is an observer, right? And it just registers it. So like, you know, it'll say if this button is pressed, call this callback function. Yeah.
Yes. But it's a little weird because like, this is kind of like the confusing part, because you have your controller, but like not everything goes through your controller. Because like for example, like here, so I guess like these would both be observers, and they're both looking for like inputs, or kind of like waiting for them. And
Well, because this is C++, so like
yeah,
everything doesn't have to be an object.
yeah.
So in C++, they usually do callback functions rather than observers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like you can actually add, and the engine actually will specify which thing can have an input component. So this is what we're really looking at, is the input component, which is built into the engine. Like I didn't write that.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, the input component like handles everything, and certain things can have like inputs, like player characters can have input components, controllers can, but you can't put them on things like a UObject, which is just like the base thing that exists in Unreal 4. So yeah, that's how these things are handled.
Okay.
And so you can have input components on multiple things, and they'll all check. So you can like I said, like the controller has like the menu, which I haven't set to like M opens the menu. So even when I'm playing my arena play or whatever, I press M, the controller will pick it up and open up the menu. So that's kind of how that works. And this is another thing which I'm confused with. I don't think this thing actually does anything. Yeah. I was gonna write a different controller for if you're in the menu, but it didn't work out. I've been like thinking about a lot is the player class is like super huge and it just keeps getting bigger. So they have this thing called like character movement component or whatever. So I've been thinking about like breaking out more stuff into this, but and that actually I'll probably actually end up doing that. Because right now I just set like get max speed. And so this will determine like how fast the character is moving. And so if we come back to our character, he will have, what is this called? Arena character movement. Here we go. So when an arena character is created, it also will create this character movement and like just initialize it as well. And let's see, I don't even think I call that get speed function, to be honest. I haven't like fully committed to doing this. Yeah. So yeah, I'm technically not doing anything with it right now. But I was thinking of like all the basic like moving, jumping, maybe
Just
moving
call
that
that
over
function.
there.
And pop back.
Yeah. But I'm not like sure because I don't know if that will actually reduce the code base. Because you had like the character and then you have this movement component, and it'll eventually have to reference the character, right? And so it'll have to have some logic in it to actually move it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing I was struggling. Like, will we gain that much from moving some of the stuff over?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably put. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to look into it more.
Because it would like kind of show you how like movement's done. So here's like move forward. And so basically what it's gets the rotation, gets the direction, and then like is moving it forward along that axis by some value.
Yeah.
So like, you know, if we broke all this out into like the movement component, you know, we can maybe like cut like this out and stuff, but it would still have to have like the basic move forward.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean.
We can initialize the variables like outside of it, but to actually move the character, it would have to be in the character.
Unless you moved a lot of the actual variables and stuff out too, which
Could.
yeah, it'd be hard to draw a line between them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would probably. I'd put that one off too.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I've been kind of thinking about it, but I'm still just debating. I don't know if it's worth the work. And the camera manager is another one that I've started to implement, but I'm kind of like hesitant. So basically, like this, I'll show you the reason why I wanted to have the camera manager. I was having problems. Actually, it's not even different. So like, see how I'm like rotating
Yeah.
and cover?
You guys should not be doing that.
I don't want the character to rotate. And there's just like a couple other things that would be nice. So like when I'm like aiming, and this is actually probably fine, like when I press right click, the camera like immediately just goes to this position, like up closer to the shoulder.
It'd be nice if it kind of swooped in a little bit.
Yeah, so then there's, I think they call it like lerping or burping or some kind of, there's like 3 different kinds of doing it. You can do like a vertical, interpol, and then there's ones you can like, it will speed up over time. But yeah, basically where it like goes, like will actually move the camera. And so I was looking up how to do that, and they were doing like all these like kind of linear transformations. on something, but they had all broken it out into like a camera manager thing like this. Because right now, in the character,
I got it up.
okay, no worries. Thanks for coming, man. I always feel lost. So yeah, basically, what I'm basically doing is I'm creating, they have this thing called a spring arm component. So I'm just putting the spring arm like in the character's back and then attaching like a camera to it. So it's like super easy to like get it up and going, but it's also like now it's kind of like limiting me to like what I can do with the character, and I'll show you an example, or with the camera. We'll go here. There's a so basically, like, all I can do is I'm taking like the camera boom, which was a spring arm, and I'm like, I can just like assign it new values. But to do like a lot more of like the cooler stuff is they had like they were working with like vectors. They would say like I'm taking this vector, and then I'm going to like do like a vert between this other vector, and then that will like change the camera. Because like they had in their camera like two vectors that like always existed and stuff, but I can't really make new variables for this now unless I can like write my own. So that was kind of the idea behind this. And yeah, see, like I started to kind of do it, and this would also help with things like scoping. Zooming in. But yeah, right now doesn't really do anything.
Okay.
And that is like the basics of like everything the character can do. Like if you were to come in here like by yourself and try like figure something out, the best place to start is that like this is pretty much where like the heart of it is. Like everything starts from one of those commands, other than the initialization. But so if you're like, how does cover work?
Start there.
Starts there.
Okay.
And it will go.
That's good to
all the
know.
same.
Then I can
Yeah.
follow it through there.
Everything in the whole thing starts here.
Okay.
Except
I think
for
I'm starting to get it all then.
yeah, except for initialization, which
Right.
it's still pretty simple. Like here is the initialization, and I'm just assigning a lot of default variables right at the beginning, and then I also cause this post initialize component. So like, I don't know why they do it this way, but this is how like I've seen a lot of the examples do it.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense because a lot of times you'll need to create the objects and put them in place, and then after that,
Yeah,
have them work together.
Yeah,
Oh, you don't get null pointers.
that's true. Because this handles more like game stuff, where it's like, see, I'm assigning like the health, so like he's
Yeah.
getting his health thing. So I guess that makes sense if he's not fully alive yet, and you try giving him health. Yeah, you might get like null pointers.
Yeah. That's just usually what they do with the pre and post.
And so yeah, that's basically the gist of it. So that's like all of the player, and you kind of explain the weapons, and that also went into effect. We have the AI that actually broke it somehow. I like, because when I updated to like the newer version of the engine, all of a sudden like the AI is like, they can't move, they just like get stuck and they're just like in place. So
Fine.
I'm not super concerned with like fixing them because it's mostly gonna be multiplayer.
Right.
We might add them in later, but for now it's no big deal. Online gets a little more like tricky just because I don't necessarily know how they actually interface with the character.
Yeah.
Because they have this thing over here, these like world settings, and this is where you kind of like, this is what I'm saying, like default class is the character, and so that's, you'll always spawn, if like if you, unless you specify something else, you'll come alive as a character. You'll set the HUD, you'll set the controller, you set the state, but then basically like you can set like this, you can set this to team deathmatch, which basically means it now is going to follow like these certain sets of rules.
Yeah.
And that somehow, you know, it all talks like this way. I'm not going to go into it much right now because.
Yeah, I think I need to not have too much in my brain.
Yeah. Because while like the multiplayer is pretty simple, it's only actually simple once you figure it out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these classes actually over here like probably don't do much. It was me like trying to figure things out, getting them to work. I don't know if this actually works. Actually, I don't think it does, but I don't think you can win games yet. But yeah,
Okay.
we'll leave it. We'll just talk about the core aspects of gameplay
Yeah.
first. So, yeah, it's not actually not like too complicated. The confusing things is like this guy is like huge, and the weapon is also like,
This guy's huge.
yeah. So the character is like has so much code in him. This has a lot of code in it. But then other than that, like all of these other ones are like pretty manageable, like reasonable. It's
Yeah.
just like this guy's ridiculous and this guy's ridiculous. I don't know if there's any way around it.
I can take a peek in them later.
Yeah.
I think one thing that would probably simplify a lot is to make a like a state thing,
Mm-hmm.
and have kind of the controller be a state thing, and
Mm-hmm.
when you change states, it'll handle everything, kind of thing.
Yeah. Because there's like a lot of stuff. I can like show you some of like the more like crappy work I did on it.
Yeah, because if you could break it out into states, then it might make a lot of things easier.
Yeah.
So,
Like when we were in 340, that's when I was like, it really kind of helped like with this. And like, oh, that makes sense, and I should do it that way.
yeah, there's a lot of design things.
Because even with like simple stuff like this, like on start crouch. I would go through like all these if statements, like is he in combat? Does he want to crouch? Is he in cover? And then like changing his like walking speed.
Yeah.
And a lot of that I don't think should be in the character.
So if we broke that kind of stuff out into states, then it's super easy to like
Yeah.
worry about this transition and that. So I think that'll help a lot.
And I was thinking like, should that all be handled like in the controller? Because in an example they did, they wrote a function called like input allow. Here we go. So this was like, I got this from an example that they wrote.
Mm-hmm.
They said, is game input allowed? And basically in the controller, my whole world just ceased to be true.
Don't they have like a control click where you can just instantly jump to it?
Code to definition. Player control. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yeah, so they made like this kind of function, and so basically they're saying when you're like,
So that checks like which mode the controller's in to see if you can do that.
yeah, so this is for things like they have like a cinematic mode,
Mm-hmm.
like we actually don't have that in our game, but again, just like look at this one an example, like a cinematic mode, and then they'll also have things like when you're looking at a menu, your character can't like walk, you can't shoot or anything until like the menu's closed, and then they set allow game put action to true again.
Okay.
So I don't know. Oh, you know what? It freaking like I think it makes sense now. Arena player state. This is probably where we should put a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah, so I kind of see almost two states.
Mm-hmm.
I see, or I guess two state levels. A state level for the actual controller
Mm-hmm.
to say like, are you in game or in menu or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this second level of actually in game, whether your character is crouching or in cover. Or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is another thing. I really wanted to break those into more states. Because right now I'm using like booleans and tons of checks.
Yeah,
But
so
we can just set the player's state to like in cover, and then based on the state, when he does things like aiming,
then it handles all the checks.
instead of going, if aiming, is he in cover? No. Is he in high cover? Is he in low cover? Is he jumping?
Yeah, so instead you'd be in a state of high cover,
Yeah.
and so it'd call that aiming. And
That would be
yeah,
nice.
so that's kind of how I see it. Almost two levels of these states: the actual like player in-game state, and then a player's controller state.
And so there would be a controller state, and then like character state or player state.
Yeah. So that might be good.
So let me see, because I know
Kind of look into that more.
the weapon, they use states in the weapon. Let me see how they do it.
And I kind of like there's a few ways to do states. I kind of like the way we did it in 340 with
Yeah.
each one being its own object.
So each state is an object. Okay.
Yeah, that's the way we had it in that one.
This, I think they do something weird with like an enum. Keep going, guys.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. You just have an enum and then you set which one and then you use that to check everything. But if we
But that wouldn't really solve the problem that we're having right now.
right,
Yeah.
so if
'Cause we
there
would also be kind of implementing command pattern along with that a little bit.
yeah, so like kind of the way we did it in the class was like if you're going to call aim or something, then the function is different depending on which state you're in.
Yeah.
So might as well break those out into individual objects,
Yeah.
and then when you switch between them, you call that one.
Mm-hmm.
It would kind of be almost a sort of a visitor pattern mixed with it.
Yeah.
Kind of a command visitor weird thing.
Yeah, it'd be like the pseudo, but it's mostly state.
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be good to just break out some of that.
Yeah, it would actually help break out a ton, and that would make the character class a lot easier to read
Yeah.
and work with. Yeah, because you can already see this is the weapon.
And it would probably
do the same thing for this
it
too.
would probably make it a little more safe as
Yeah.
well, because then you don't have to worry about so many different bool combinations of what states you're in.
Yeah. Like I would also want to create like kind of like a can we did in class.
Yeah.
Except for I just feel like in our class, the can object got a little bit crazy.
Right.
Just because every single thing in the game went into one can. So there's just like huge, massive functions, and they're just like one after another.
Right.
So maybe
I would like to break that apart a little bit too.
you have like a player can, and then like a game state can.
Yeah. That would be good.
Because then, like, instead of like when he's like trying to like start sprinting, instead of saying like, is he crouching? Is he shooting? Is he performing melee? Like, all these things we just do like player can dot can sprint, and instead of like having this giant if statement,
Right.
just do like can sprint.
I like it. Let's do it.
Okay, so we kind of like mix notes with things. That's not. This is what I want. So state pattern. Good job. State pattern for controller and player. I'm also going to say the weapon.
Okay.
Because
And
I don't like how we're doing enums.
I'm sure we'll find another few places like menus and stuff.
Mm.
Because I know menus usually use the state pattern.
Yeah.
So.
The menus is like another one that I'm not super familiar with. I use their kind of like in editor visual
Oh, okay, yeah.
UI maker, which is like super easy to like get stuff up quick, but it is like a lot pretty limited in its functionality.
I was almost thinking the other day it would be cool if you could do like pretty much almost not have menus for most of the game, but just by like you're in the like weapon changing area,
Yeah.
and you just can almost click on the screens in that room,
Yeah.
rather than going into a menu.
And that's the kind of stuff that I like the best.
Yeah.
It's more kind of like immersive, so it's like instead of just like opening up these like windows, you like are interacting with your environment more.
Yeah, I guess the one downside is you have to make sure it's still pretty fast, otherwise people get annoyed by it.
They actually have like they create something they call it like UMG, which is like I have no idea what UMG stands for actually, but they have one they can do like 3D UMG, so you can create like 3D UI objects like in the world. So like, did you ever play like Borderlands?
Well, I know Dead Space does it.
Yeah, so it'd be like that kind of stuff where it's like, and even like the other players can see. So like, if I walked up to like an equipment locker, and it created like this thing where it had like these guns, like some guy like walking up behind me could also see like what I was looking at and what I was doing like in my UI.
Okay, yeah.
So they can do stuff like that. I mean, and you can also set it so like
They can't.
it's private, so
Yeah.
only the player can see it. But you could also do cool stuff too.
I like it.
So
State pattern.
what was the other one? Oh, can do fun.
Yeah,
Can do.
can do's.
Player start top. This will make code like so much cleaner. It will really help people be able to just kind of look at it and get going.
Yeah, it'll be nice if we can break some stuff out before the class starts.
Because even if like we're all we can do is just like simple, it's just like, all right, just check the CPU in front. All right, like they don't have to.
Right. Or if we need to add a new state,
Yeah.
then because we have jetpack mode,
Uh-huh.
then you just add another player control state,
Yeah.
and you're good.
Those will be good. I'll start working on those.
And vehicles.
And vehicles. Have you played with their vehicle template?
A little bit,
Yeah.
not much.
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crappy too.
I was like surprised, like I'm wondering because I think you're going a lot faster than you really feel like you are.
Yeah.
Because like you're going and you feel like you're going like at 60, but in like the game you're like going 280. So you like hit a little bump and you think it goes, and it flies like crazy, like it just like crashes and just like, oh my
Well,
gosh.
like you spin out like crazy.
Yeah.
You have no traction.
Then you like opposite friction and like scale back like the speed up because they're like vehicles all physics based. But I feel like a lot of Unreal engines like physics are off. Like gravity, like 1.0 is supposed to be like 9.8 meters per second, but it's like so slow. Like if you have it set to like 1, the guy jumps and like floats forever. I was like, that's not like.
I wonder.
Gravity. So I doubled it and it felt like a lot more real.
I wonder if you're like, because that would make sense if your characters are either too small or too big.
That's true. I don't know how big my guy is.
So maybe your scale is a little bit off.
Because I started this project from their third-person template. I didn't start this from scratch.
Theirs would be off.
Yeah, so I basically went into the editor and said, you've probably seen it, but
Yeah.
I just said, because I like literally started, like, I don't know anything. And started this third-person template, and I kind of just like read what they were doing, and then as I kind of like got some like momentum, I was able to like start doing stuff with it. But yeah, setting like the character size and scale, like I hadn't done any of that. I kind of just didn't even think about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how you even tell like how tall he is.
So they actually do have like a reference.
Oh, do they?
So they have something called like Unreal Units. So what is it called? Unreal Units 2. I think it's like 1,000 Unreal Units. This is probably more correct. I was thinking it's like 1,000. One Unreal Unit. Okay.
So
250 Unreal Units is 16 feet. It's like crazy. That makes no sense. But like I can come.
So well, it says 1 foot is 16 UU.
Yes. So there we go.
And then 1 meter is 52.5.
So we can come here and see, like, I can click on this and see that this is the details panel. Okay, we're at. This is 200
200.
Unreal Units.
200 side to side? Or tall? What's tall?
This is my
Z.
y-axis.
Okay, Y is up.
Y
No, Z is up.
So it's blue, and blue is Z. So Z is up. So yeah, it's 200.
Okay, so 200 tall, and your character is about that tall, right?
So yeah, let's look at it. So he's a little bit shorter than it.
But he's crouched down a little, so he might.
Yeah.
He's
straighten his
pretty
leg.
close to 200. So
Yeah.
what's 200?
And it was 16. So 200 equals.
He's 12 feet tall.
It's huge, man.
That explains why you have to double gravity.
Ah, that's so interesting.
So, he's 12 feet tall.
I actually I read a lot of like books and like stuff about like game design. They say like that is one of like the biggest things is like getting the scaling right
Yeah.
in world space. Because he's about twice the size of a normal person, and so it would explain why I had to make double gravity to make it feel correct.
Yeah.
I wonder if they like come in here.
He's huge.
Yeah. All this stuff's huge, man.
That's interesting. So, yeah.
So maybe that's part of the lore. Like this is the land of giants.
Well, you'd never know, though.
You'd never feel it.
Unless you turn gravity back down.
I think the easiest fix is to just keep gravity at double. They're like, hey, we come back here.
Well, but then if we use models and stuff, you gotta double the size of everything.
It's true. I haven't had like a problem with it yet. That's why I've never noticed it. Like the weapons, like
Everything comes double?
I don't know. I didn't scale these weapons at all. These are just like how I bought them, and then like even.
Well, they probably modeled them to that guy if that's like a stock person.
The one that makes me think that it's not a big deal. Well, maybe Epper did scale this. This is Epper, who's also like working on it. He made this.
Yeah.
And it's about the correct size. But maybe then again, like he placed this and everything. Maybe he scaled it to make it bigger.
Can you check the scaling of it?
I don't know if he scaled it here or if he just did it in the editor.
Scale.
Oh, he did scale it.
By 29 stuff.
And he actually.
Oh, that's really tiny.
So he made it super tiny actually when he was working with it in like 3D Max.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So I mean, it's not a big deal to scale things. Like you saw, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Just come there.
It would just be. I would think it would be easier to figure out the math if everything was.
Yeah, it was amazing when we started like that. I guess it.
How long would it take to?
I have no idea how to make my guy smaller.
Yeah.
I don't know where they set that scale. Because I think the problem is the mesh and skeleton, not necessarily the code. Because I come into here. This is the skeleton mesh. Yeah.
Yeah, he's tall.
So you would have to come in here and change. If you're able to change this, and we probably could, like if I that would be the hard part. The hard part is the skeleton. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess animations and everything would have to.
Because they have like a retargeting like software built into this, so that you can change the animations will fit for like you can if you have like a big human and small human,
Yeah.
you can use the same animations. But that's something I don't really know about.
It's weird that their demo stuff is all 2 times.
The size of what it should be. That's super interesting.
Huh.
It makes me think that we might not be that smart over there.
I know, right?
I always
Rookie
think,
mistake.
I'm always like, oh, I don't know, like, am I like as smart as those guys? I'm like, maybe, because they don't even get their scaling right.
Does it say how tall it is? Wait, you could look at the X position of the head, and if that's at like 200.
Oh, wait. Current screen size, triangles.
Approximate size is 192 by 214. Yeah, so that he's
tall.
He's over 12 feet tall.
He's like taller than Goliath. What the heck? I don't know how to like.
Oh, unreal.
See, I would have to grab.
I wonder if you Googled it, if there's like a bunch of people.
You know, I like guarantee you, no one has like figured this out. Is there like a way I can just like make him smaller? So this is the part like getting going in my head. I just don't understand like this skeleton. Like, how do I change the skeleton?
Yeah, I don't know anything about animation.
Well, if I change I've used the retargeting tool once. Basically, you just like take your model and then you make a template of it, and then you basically take the skeleton and you like hook it up to all the parts in the template, and then it can go both ways, like no problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But this is a skeleton mesh. I would just need straight up static mesh. Third person perspective. This is another thing I need to do. I need to like clean up all this stuff.
Oh, one thing I did notice. So you have your private and public folders.
Oh yeah.
So the like usual programmer way to name those is source src
Mm-hmm.
and include.
I think I can actually change that. Shouldn't be too hard. This might like cause it to go crazy. Actually,
SRC.
I can do it.
That's how.
Undo. Because okay.
Oh yeah, because you gotta change all the includes too.
All the includes would have to be changed. I mean, they're not too hard, but maybe I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just have to go through and change all the.
Yeah, because you usually have source, src, include for all the .h files.
Oh, so here's the source right here. So you're saying I would add another folder outside of this for the headers?
Yeah. Let's see. So is the compile root that the arena folder?
Dude, make things out now.
Come on, man! You gotta know your compile root. Your project directory.
I think it is the arena folder. Wait.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it. Because you got your, that's the project
folder.
folder.
Yeah.
So, normally the include folder would be there. And so then you'd have the source folder and then the include folder. The source would contain all the .cpp's and .c's, and then the include folder would have all the HPP's and H's.
Okay.
That's usually the structure of C++ code. I mean, there are some
Includes?
differences, but
There you go.
just include all lowercase, all one.
All lowercase.
Yeah, you usually do all lowercase out of laziness because it's easier to type. I mean, I guess you could do capitalized.
I don't have to capitalize in there because I have to stay consistent.
Maybe you should just lowercase everything.
I have to change like every single file.
So did they do uppercase?
So yeah, they do uppercase, and they organize their code the way that I'm doing it.
See, they're Windows people.
Yeah, because I started way back. I started this long time ago learning it. Before I was probably into bordering.
So did they have the H files in the source directory?
Yeah. They're the ones that did source, private, public, and then broke it up like that.
That's weird. Well, if they do it that way, maybe we should just leave it for now.
Yeah. I do also feel though it's not the best organization. Like I feel like I sometimes get.
Yeah, because I've never seen.
I don't know. It is kind of hard for me to like find stuff this way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes it figures it out.
Well, I mean, usually they break out the the reason they do the source in the include folder is because you kind of want them separate in case you want to compile all your source files but not link them, and then you take your H files and other people can use those. And you can essentially make your own library that way. Because then you're just sharing the H files with everybody, and they can use those and then link up to your library. Does that make sense?
That would be really smart if you're planning kind of like, I don't know, you know, like Blizzard is a good example. Because they'll use like their StarCraft code base, and they use that for the Heroes of the Storm. So you can link to all those libraries.
Yeah.
Their other one.
Yeah, so they probably do something similar.
Yeah, you can see how that will. If you're playing a long game, that would be really useful.
Yeah, and the other nice thing is if you manicure your H files nicely, then your H files are pretty much your documentation. So you don't need to look into your source folder at all.
Yeah.
You just look at your H files and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's where they got that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, just leave it for now.
Yeah. I did not like this when I started doing it, because I always was getting like tripped up. I'd be like in like public, like on accident, and I was like, wait, how'd they get here? Or like saying like I've been private, I'm like trying to find like I'm thinking like looking for my headers.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's maybe not a huge deal, but let's see. Do you have any questions about anything else?
I think that's about as much as my brain can process for today.
You've like had a little more experience with the engine, so you probably understood a little bit more.
Not too much. I think it's confusing. I did do tutorial 1.